Now, would it be true to say that objectivists should be happier than other people generally, and that they should live longer than other people generally because they hold rational values and life as the standard? I would say that human happiness and love, as across the human race, depends certainly on philosophy. The more rational a given period is, the longer people live and the happier they are. So you can, as extreme contrast, the misery and the very short life, I believe in the teens of the Middle Ages, with the situation in the 20th century. But that does not mean that any one objectivist as such is necessarily happier than others or than non-objectivists. Now, if you're taking into account what I call an OPAR, the inner happiness, that is the integration of a philosophy, to the point where you have an inner life like Rourke's of self-esteem, purpose, reason, then that will certainly arm you and give you a basic content that those without it will not have. But if happiness in the full sense is the union of your inner confidence with outer achievement, then that may very well not be controllable in the field that you went to. Or you may make an error through no fault of your own, or a tragedy may strike in the form of an illness or an accident that deprives you of the attributes you need to succeed. Or you may choose a work that's perfectly reasonable, but that is more difficult than you bargained for. So a lot of your life is grief over trying to do this work, and yet you couldn't do any other work. So it's a rational choice, but it diminishes to that extent your feeling. But on the other hand, you would be worse if you went elsewhere. There are a great many factors that affect your happiness if you include the outer world as well. Now, a great many you will be better equipped to deal with if you have a rational philosophy, but you may not necessarily be able to do so. Of course, if you live in a bad world, then no philosophy and no inner contentment or self-esteem is going to make you happy. And We the Living is the perfect example of that. So you are dependent on a free country, semi-free at least, an inner self-esteem and purpose and reason, I'm using that briefly, and then outer values which depend on you, or at least problems are rectifiable by you in order to say, okay, you've achieved happiness. And certainly that is not all guaranteed by objectivism. On the other hand, a person of common sense who does not know philosophy could have enough of the inner and choose something in a semi-free world where he is able to achieve, like a Reardon, before he knows anything about philosophy, and be much happier than someone who can say A is A and rationality and all the rest of it. So it depends what you mean. Now, as far as being long-lived, again, as I've indicated, it's generally true, but there, as we know, longevity depends on a lot of factors over and above the philosophy that rules a country. It depends on diet. It depends on exercise. It depends on genes. Now, the right philosophy will lead you to the better diet, exercise, and maybe even someday genetic engineering. But that doesn't mean we have it all right now. nor does it mean that you're a bad objectivist if you don't consistently follow it. They say that I don't know if it's true, but they say that UCLA has discovered that if you in effect starve yourself, you have 1/4 or something like that, fewer calories, you'll live much longer. And of course, the people in that state have many negative side effects. I know of one guy in Texas who has to wear a heavy fur coat in the Texas summer because he's freezing all the time. He's slowed his metabolism to such a point, but he's going to live more years. Now, the question is that what you want or define as human life? So up to a point, you want to include some things that you regard as pleasure, regardless of whether a doctor would say this is the best diet, etc. But that is compatible within limits of saying life is the standard, because it's life within the context of achieving values and achieving happiness. So that's what I would basically say. Not necessarily, but the more you have rational ideas, the more you have a chance of achieving of getting the inner state, achieving in existence what you want, and living according to the conditions that will enable you to survive. And whether any given objectivist does that or not, I couldn't generalize and say, yes, they generally do. That's it for today.